Every casino has a window called the cage. Chips go in, money comes out. In February 2016, a cage in Manila had a problem it did not know about: $81 million. Nobody had to invent that machine. It is the oldest laundering device ever built. Not in a suitcase, in an account at a bank on Jupiter Street. 4 days in, and already being spent. That money had crossed the Pacific from a Federal Reserve account in New York. Its owner was the Central Bank of Bangladesh, a country whose entire foreign reserve ran to about $27.5 billion. Whoever was moving it felt no hurry at all. They had read the calendar first. Here is what I want you to hold on to. The attackers asked for $951 million. They got roughly a tenth of it. The rest died in a queue in New York. One of the reasons it died was a single word, misspelled in a wire instruction in Colombo. That word is the most famous detail in this case, and the most misunderstood, because the misspelling stopped a transfer. Hold on to that verb. There is a difference between stopping a transfer and stopping a theft, and this case is the clearest place I know to see it. 10 years later, most of that $81 million has never come back. I spent years reading transaction monitoring reports. When I look at this case, I see a bank robbery that mostly failed, bolted to a laundering operation that almost entirely succeeded. This video is the anatomy of the second half, where the money went and who was legally obliged to notice. The answer to the second question is the reason the first one worked. Start with the target. Bangladesh Bank is the country's central bank. Like most central banks, it holds foreign currency reserves in an account at the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. At the end of 2015, those reserves stood at roughly $27.5 billion. Hold that figure next to what was requested. $951 million is close to $1 in every 30 the country had. Not a raid on a branch, a raid on the national balance sheet. That account is operated by instruction. Bangladesh Bank sends a message over SWIFT, the interbank messaging network, and New York pays. The message is the authority. No phone call, no handshake. Authenticate correctly and the money moves, which is worth sitting with for a second. A central bank's reserves are protected by cryptography and procedure, not by a vault door. Every control in that chain assumes the instruction is genuine. Break that assumption and the system works perfectly. It just works for somebody else. Now the other end of the wire. On the 15th of May, 2015, 4 accounts were opened at a branch of Rizal Commercial Banking Corporation on Jupiter Street in Makati City, Manila. Per the complaint later filed by the Philippine Anti-Money Laundering Council, 4 names sat on them: Michael Francisco Cruz, Jesse Christopher Lagrosas, Alfred Santos Vergara, Enrico Teodoro Vasquez. Prosecutors said those people did not exist. Each account was opened with a small deposit, and then nothing happened. For 9 months. That is the detail I would circle first. 9 months of dormancy is tradecraft. A brand new account that receives $25 million is a flare going up. An account sitting quietly on the books since last spring is a customer. Whoever planned this understood that monitoring systems inside a bank are built to notice change. So they arranged, well in advance, for there to be nothing to change. Then the calendar. Bangladesh's working week runs Sunday to Thursday. Its weekend falls on Friday and Saturday. In the Philippines, banks close Saturday and Sunday, and Monday, the 8th of February 2016, was a national holiday. Chinese New Year, gazetted by proclamation the previous August. Stack those together. A message sent on a Thursday evening in Dhaka lands into a Bangladeshi weekend, then a Philippine weekend, then a Philippine holiday. Nobody picked that window by accident. 4 doors, closing one after another, every one of them bought with a calendar, and a 5th door waiting in Manila. That one had never been open at all. Thursday, the 4th of February, 2016. At around 20:36 in Dhaka, the instructions begin going out. 35 of them reached New York. Their combined value was $951 million. I am going to be careful here. This is the part people want the most detail about. and the part one will give you least of. The attackers had obtained what they needed to submit authenticated messages, and they had placed software inside the bank's SWIFT environment. What that software did is the only operational fact this story requires. It stopped the paperwork from printing. Bangladesh Bank ran a physical audit trail, every SWIFT confirmation printed automatically to a printer in a locked room. Staff read the paper each morning and reconciled it. A good control, and precisely why it was the thing attacked. Forensic analysts at BAE Systems later found the software had been written specifically for this bank's configuration. The code hooked into the SWIFT software and interfered with what came out of that printer. So on Friday morning, the tray was empty, and the staff drew the reasonable conclusion. They thought the printer was broken. The story is usually told as a printer failure delayed the response. It was not a failure. It was a fabrication wearing the costume of one, and it bought the attackers a weekend. Now the New York end. Of the 35 instructions, 30 were stopped and never paid. 5 cleared. $101 million left the account. 20 million of that went to Sri Lanka. We will come back to that leg, because it is the reason this case is famous. 81 million went to Manila, into 4 accounts that had been sitting empty since May. Now watch the machine. Anti-money laundering work breaks this process into 3 stages, and I am going to draw them one at a time. Stage 1 is placement, getting dirty money into the financial system at all. For most criminals, that is the hard part. Here it was already done. The wire did it for them. Stage 2 is layering, moving the money often enough and through enough hands that the trail stops meaning anything. Layering starts on the 5th of February. The dollars are converted into pesos. The 4 accounts are drained into a 5th. That account sits in the name of a real businessman and a real trading company and functions as a consolidation point. From there, the money moves to Philrem, a licensed remittance company, which handled roughly $80.9 million of it. And then it goes somewhere I need you to think about carefully. It goes to casinos. Around $29 million into Solaire, a resort casino in Manila. Around $21 million into Midas through a junket operator called Eastern Hawaii Leisure. Junket operators bring high-rolling gamblers to a casino and run the credit between them. Money enters as a buy-in. Chips circulate on a floor. Value leaves as winnings, or as a return deposit. That is stage 3. Integration, the money coming back out looking clean. And notice the arithmetic, because the trail is already thinning. Philrem handled roughly 81 million. About 50 million of it lands at those 2 casinos. A Philippine senator put roughly $17 million of Philrem's handling as simply unaccounted for. A casino floor does something a bank cannot do. The money's history becomes genuinely unrecoverable because a chip has no memo line. You would have seen what a monitoring analyst saw that week. 4 dormant accounts waking up on the same morning, funding from a single foreign correspondent. Immediate conversion into local currency. Onward movement within hours. Every one of those is a textbook red flag. Not one of them is a crime by itself. That is the honest limitation of transaction monitoring. It detects patterns usually innocent, occasionally not, and it does so after the instruction has already been carried out. Which brings us to the fact that decides this entire case. In February 2016, casinos in the Philippines were not covered persons under that country's Anti-Money Laundering Act. Banks were, remittance companies were, casinos were not. They carried no legal obligation to file a report on any of it. So when investigators followed this money, and they did follow it, quickly and competently, they followed it to a doorway, and the law stopped at the doorway. Colombo, Sri Lanka, $20 million. The instructions sent that money to an account for an organization called the Shalika Foundation, except the word foundation was not spelled that way in the message. Someone had typed F-A-N-D-A-T-I-O-N, Foundation. The payment routed through Deutsche Bank as correspondent. Deutsche Bank queried the spelling with Bangladesh Bank. Separately, Pan Asia Banking Corporation in Colombo weighed the size of the payment against the size of the recipient and raised its own query. $20 million is an extraordinary sum for a small nonprofit. Two institutions, two different reasons, same week. The transaction was reversed. Bangladesh got all 20 million back, the only leg of this heist recovered in full. Now, the famous version of this story. You have probably heard that a typo saved $850 million. The truth is more interesting than the legend. Reuters reported in 2016 that the remaining transfers were held in New York for a mix of reasons. One of them was a single word inside an instruction. Jupiter, the street name of the RCBC branch. Jupiter also appears in the name of a shipping company under United States sanctions on Iran. A sanctions filter matched on a street address. Reuters' own source called it a total fluke. But the same reporting describes several other flags already causing trouble for those payments. The instructions were missing correspondent bank details. The payees were individuals rather than institutions, and the traffic did not resemble Bangladesh Bank's normal pattern. This was an account that paid institutions, rarely people, and never 35 times in an evening. The Federal Reserve Bank of New York has never confirmed that Jupiter was the cause. It declined to comment at the time, and no inquiry document has settled the question since. So here is what I will say on the record. The word Jupiter was in that file. Well reported, and it may well have contributed. It was also one of several reasons those payments sat in a queue instead of going out of the door. And the fatal flaw is real either way, because look at what it actually did. The typo, the filters, the queue, all of it operated on the transfers. All of it operated in the seconds and the hours before the money moved. $81 million had already moved. Nothing was waiting on the other side of that. In this case, the detection systems protected the payment layer completely and the cash-out layer not at all. Monday, the 8th of February. Bangladesh Bank finally obtains a legible record of what left the building and sends a stop payment request to New York, 4 days late. By then, the Philippine leg had already been converted, consolidated, remitted, and delivered. The stop order reached a bank in Manila that was shut for Chinese New Year. What followed was fast, and in places genuinely impressive. The Anti-Money Laundering Council filed its complaint. The Philippine Senate opened a public inquiry and put the participants in front of it under oath. Investigators reconstructed the trail within weeks, the 4 fictitious accounts, the consolidation, Philrem, the junkets, the floor. That inquiry is worth noting because of what it was doing. A Senate hearing is not a criminal court. Senators were subpoenaing testimony precisely because the paper trail ran out, and testimony was the only instrument left. When investigators start asking people what happened, it usually means the records that should have answered were never created. And then the recoveries began, and they were small. One casino junket operator turned money back over to the authorities across 4 handovers in April and May of 2016, $4.63 million and 488 million pesos. A Manila court ruled that Bangladesh was the legal owner. Just under $15 million went home that November. 15 million out of 81. The rest had gone onto the floor. Some of it was handed over as cash. Investigators traced roughly $18 million and a further 600 million pesos moving to a single individual by casino delivery. Past that point, the trail becomes testimony rather than records, because there were no records anyone was required to keep. To be fair to the institutions here, the RCBC branch manager did not report what any competent banker would have reported, and that was punished. But the casinos, in 2016, broke no reporting rule by accepting that money. No reporting rule applied to them. Call that a loophole if you like. A loophole is an accident. This boundary had been drawn, argued over, and left exactly where it was. And that is the answer to the question I left open at the start: who picked that weekend and why it worked. The calendar was chosen. The exemption was simply there, waiting. The 17 months that followed are how you know it did not stay that way. On the 14th of July, 2017, the President of the Philippines signed Republic Act 10927. That statute designates casinos as covered persons under the Anti-Money Laundering Act for single cash transactions above 5 million pesos. The gap this money walked through was closed by name. The reckoning then, sourced, and with the loose ends left visible. Maya Santos de Guito, the manager of the RCBC branch on Jupiter Street, was convicted on 8 counts of money laundering in January 2019. The Court of Appeals affirmed that conviction in full in a decision dated the 6th of February 2023. Her sentence runs to decades. Her bank was fined 1 billion pesos by the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas in August 2016, reported at the time as the largest penalty that regulator had ever imposed. RCBC paid it in 2 installments. Philrem's registration as a remittance agent was canceled that June. For the theft itself, the United States government named a person. In September 2018, the Department of Justice charged Park Jin-hyuk, a North Korean programmer, over a conspiracy the complaint ties to the Lazarus Group. Treasury designated him the same day. Its notice refers explicitly to the February 2016 fraudulent transfer of $81 million from Bangladesh Bank. In 2021, 2 more North Korean nationals were indicted alongside him. All 3 indictments remain open, and then the money. Here I have to be careful with you, because there are headlines that will mislead you. In September 2025, a court in Dhaka ordered the confiscation of $81 million from RCBC. That order was widely reported as a recovery. A confiscation order is a legal instrument, not a transfer, and RCBC has said the funds are no longer in its custody. The number that matters is the one Bangladesh's own investigators use. In March 2026, they put the amount recovered from the Philippines at $14.66 million. Read that carefully. It is the same money that came home in 2016. Nothing has been recovered from the Philippines in the 9 years since. In June 2026, investigators put the total recovered, including the Sri Lankan leg, at $34.6 million of $101 million that left New York. Roughly $66 million is still gone. The criminal case in Dhaka has not reached trial. Submission of the investigation report has been deferred as of late 2025 for the 89th time. A draft charge sheet names 64 individuals and entities, among them a former governor of Bangladesh Bank. That document went to the Attorney General's office in March and has still not been filed. The civil suit Bangladesh Bank brought against RCBC in New York in 2020 was, as of January 2026, still in discovery. 10 years, no trial, no judgment, and about 2/3 of the money never came home. So what did this case actually teach? The lesson investigators took out of Bangladesh is narrower than firewalls and more useful. Every control that worked here worked on the transfer. All of it sat on the payment rail, and all of it did its job. Nothing at all sat on the exit. The money was stopped while it was still a message. Once it became chips, it stood outside the system that was watching. That is the gap every anti-money laundering regime has been closing ever since. The Philippines closed its own in 2017 and put casinos under the law. But the principle travels a long way past casinos, to every business that takes large sums and owes nobody an explanation for them. Follow a wire, and you are reading a document. Follow cash across a gaming floor, and you are reading a story somebody told you afterwards. $81 million proved that. Most of it is still proving it. If this was useful, hit like. That genuinely helps this channel reach the people who work in this field. And subscribe if you want the next case file. Case closed. Follow the money.